We don't have a name for this podcast.
We'll have a name in the title, in the description below.
We're working on it.
We're working
on it. And just a quick background. We wanted to start this podcast because we both have kind of a different view on a lot of these current topics that are going on. And as just an example, on today, we're going to be talking about the left brain and the right brain hemispheres and how that differentiates some people pretty widely. Back in the 1960s, there was a study of the split brain. They were doing a lot of experiments on rats and mice and cats and stuff. And they figured out, we've always known this, but they understood then a lot better that the brain is made up of two hemispheres, two completely separate hemispheres that are only connected by, I forget the name of it, but imagine that a highway on the back of the brain. Right. And that's what connects both sides of your brain. And so people started to stipulate on the idea that the left brain contains all your analytical thinking and your right brain contains more of the creative side of your thinking. And while that's not exactly the case, it does form some sort of a mold for how the different sides of your brain interact with each other.
Right.
It's not exactly true that the right brain does all the analytical thinking.
Yeah, that it's not so black and white.
Yeah, it's not so black and white, but it is kind of the case.
And it's a good foundation for like us, like the analytical side and the creative side. Even though you can be creative and I can be analytical, it's just the way that we approach things, and we'll get more into it as we go on.
But not so much, because I'm not as creative as you. You're a lot more creative than me. Let's just take our careers, for example.
Right. But so I am a music education major. I will finish eventually.
I'm in the finance field, focused in accounting, doing tax and all of that. And that's what I like to do, messing with numbers.
Right. And we both started with music. I mean, not started, but like we both been in band. We're both really into music and art and all this stuff. But like he's into like solving puzzles and problems and all this stuff, which I think is why you love your job. And I'm more into like drawing and painting and nature and like I like making music and listening to it and analyzing all of that. Like I'm analytical in that way. And I love kids, and so the education part, like I would love working with kids.
Well, I look at the logic behind a lot of things a lot more than the emotion behind it.
I'm super like emotion based,
When you look at writing a piece of music, you're usually looking at the tones and the way certain notes merge with each other. Of course, we know that a lot of it has to do with scales and the technicalities behind it. But I'm focused on the technicalities behind it. I'm not so much on, okay, this sounds cool next to this other note, You're more focused on...
Yeah, I'm like, this sounds better. I don't even... Honestly, when I approach writing music, and I haven't written a lot, I probably should. I'm not the best music major. But like I approach like, ooh, this sounds cooler. Like this makes me feel this type of way. And that's how I go about it. I don't think, oh, well, this is the Mixolydian scale with the third degree, like whatever. I'm just like, no, like this sounds better than this one because it makes it feel darker. Like that's it. And I feel like you would approach it the other way. Like if you were looking at music, you're like, no, well, I want to use this scale because like in history, it has been known to blah, blah, blah. And I don't overthink it so much like that.
Yeah, I'm like, this is a C major scale. Why do you have a flat or a sharp in there? Like,
right.
Like you shouldn't. Like I'm looking at the rules of it, and sometimes you just need to look at this makes a funky little sound.
Right.
This is a lot more interesting. But, I just got to stick to the logic rules behind it. That's part of the issue that we're having right now with coming up with a theme for this podcast, because I don't know. I wanted to have some sort of meaning, deeper logic meaning behind it. But at the end of the day, you would tell me that it just needs to sound good. It just needs to fit the...
Right. Yeah. It just needs to be like entertaining and like relatable. And like most people feed off of that. It's like, oh yeah, like I said the same thing. Like I thought the same thing. And not to say like we just need to be people pleasers either, but like there's more to just like, oh, this is like the step by step how we're gonna do this. Like, it's like, no, like, oh, the colors are pretty on the logo, and like the name is cool and like funny.
Yeah, and that's where my creativity ends. That's why you're doing the logo.
Right.
I'm not. Leave me in charge of the audio and all the technical stuff. I want to do that.
But I could never. It stresses me out just looking at all of this.
It's fun. I like numbers. That's why in the previous unreleased podcast that we were talking about like Minesweeper or Sudoku. I like those types of games.
Right.
Yeah, they're more logic games. Meanwhile, I'm not sure what kind of games you play.
Oh, I was talking about Tomb Raider. I was like, oh, like you're adventuring and it's still like puzzles kind of, but like you get to explore and you get to kind of do your own thing. And it's just nice to walk through the world itself.
It looks pretty.
Yeah, it looks pretty.
The soundtrack is good.
Yeah, and it's like a woman, like girl power, like. No, but it's really cool, and I really like those games. And it's not like a gun game. I call them pew pew games. I was like, it's not those little pew pew games. Like it has substance, And I like that. Like I can do Sudoku every once in a while, but I can't sit there and do it. He used to do these, I don't know if you still do them, where you like color in square by square by solving. Yeah, by solving some kind of equation. Like that's fun. He does math for fun.
It's not so much. Well, it is fun. I enjoy it, but it's not like. Okay, I do enjoy those kinds of games like Tomb Raider, Uncharted, all of those pretty games, movie games, games that, graphics are on point, the soundtrack is amazing, but I'd rather very much prefer a Minesweeper, something super simple. So that's just one of the weird ways that our brains are different in that sense.
Right.
I found out this crazy thing that a lot of people that are left-handed? Mm-hmm. The right side of their brain is more dominant.
Yeah, it crosses over. So you're right-handed.
I'm right-handed,
so your left side is more dominant.
Yeah. That's it.
But you're left brain, right? And I'm right brain?
I'm left brain, yeah. Mm-hmm. The stipulation is that the left brain controls a lot more analytical thinking. And so we've realized this whenever we have some kind of discussion about politics or something that's going on in the current term, where I'm kind of looking more at what's the money of it, what's the logical.
And I'm like, no, but look, people feel this way because of this and this and this. And I'm real passionate about it. I'm real passionate about a lot of things. And we can get into it when we dip our toes further into these like waters. Controversies. And I'm not one to shy away from like speaking my mind and saying, look, this is what I believe and blah, blah, blah. But we'll take it slow, baby steps where we have to like learn to walk.
She's like, save the bears. And I'm like, but petroleum money.
Asshole.
No, save the bears. Or here's another one. And this is one where I get a lot of backlash. Emotions are nothing but chemicals.
And you've told that to me before. And I'm like, okay, but like you still feel the way you feel, like whether they're chemicals or not, like you still feel sad, you still feel like happy, you still feel love and lust and all of these things.
Yeah.
So you can't, to me, it's like, wow, you're just like undermining the fact that I have feelings. Not me personally. I never take you like personally like that.
Yeah, but I mean.
But other people would. They'd be like, wow, like you really don't care. Like.
No, I'm not saying I don't care. I do feel emotions. Like I'm not a robot,
Right.
But I do keep always in mind the fact that, happiness is just endorphins. It's just chemicals going around in your brain. That's the way I look at depression. That's a chemical imbalance.
Right.
That's the way I look at kids in high school. That's a hormone imbalance. Mm-hmm. That's all chemicals being worked in your brain.
Right, but when you're the one living it, you're like, yeah, I technically know that like we're going through puberty and all this stuff, but I still feel like the world is ending. I still feel like that girl that said this about me is like the worst ever, and like like just those rages.
Oh yeah.
I miss it.
It's impossible to escape it. But once I realized that all of it was just chemicals, I was like, okay, I get why I did everything I did in school. I get why I behaved this type of way. I get why, everybody had those couples, those, relationships. Everybody had, weird little fights here and there. Emotions. I was beefing with a teacher. Like, what? That was
You
just
were.
with a ton of them.
I will never understand. But like, so do you use that as a way to like, oh, I don't feel ashamed of what I did when I was younger? Because like, that was just like my hormones, you know?
No,
like,
I feel ashamed, but I found a way to explain why I was doing everything that I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
And like other people would be like, I don't know why I did that. Like I was so dumb back then. It's like, yeah, you were dumb, but like
All
your
of us
body,
were.
yeah, your body was just doing this thing, you know.
It's not your fault. At 15, 100 years ago, people were already having kids, and like people would marry you off, and you know, even younger. Like you think maybe 300, 400 years ago, you know, parents would marry off their kids as soon as they hit puberty. People,
Right.
yeah, it's one of those cases where, okay, we're just advanced for the way our bodies have developed over, you know, millennia, 20,000 years that we've been in our planet.
Right.
And so now I go back and look at it, and yeah, I did plenty of really stupid things, but I understand why.
Yeah.
And not because of, I was emotional or because of this. No, I can justify saying, yeah, it was chemicals in my brain.
Yeah. And I think we've talked about that before too, how back then every problem seemed like I said, like the end of the world.
The end of the world.
Like,
yeah.
oh my God, I'll never live this down. I don't know how I'll go on. And it's like, dude, somebody just looked at you like, calm down. You're fine.
Yeah. I mean, I still remember things that happened back in 3rd grade that I'm still angry
Right, and
over.
it's still stuck.
This
Bullying sticks.
It's necessary though.
Don't say that. Don't say that. No, I don't endorse that. But I get what you mean. Like by, oh, well, it makes you stronger and it makes you like deal with social situations better. Like,
is that terrible baby boomer way of thinking? It builds character.
I don't think bullying is necessary, but
I don't think it's necessary, but it, you know,
but it's just bound to happen. Like you can't control what everybody does. You just have to like know how to handle it, I guess.
If it's applied at an enough quantity, then I think it does well. Sometimes it goes too far and kids are traumatized for life.
Yeah, there's kids like committing suicide and all this shit because, I don't know. And I've seen people say like, oh, well, this generation is just weaker. Like back in my day, like kids weren't out there doing this just because somebody laughed at them, blah, blah, blah. But it's different. And it's nonstop now. Like it's like you get home and you still see it on your phone and you still see it on your computer.
Yeah, people mock cyberbullying, and cyberbullying is 100% a real thing.
Yeah.
You know, but I mean, I got bullied when I was little and I grew out of it. And ever since then, I've learned, okay, yeah, oh, so I used to take this from people. Okay, now I know not to take these things.
Well, all my bullies want to date me, so. All you have to do is get pretty. I'm just kidding. No, but I've definitely been on the same boat, and we've talked about this before, that like we were never like the popular kids or whatever. We were kind of like the weirdos on the side.
We're the weird annoying
but it
kids,
was fun. Like we kind of like found each other, and it's like, all right, like who gives a
well, we fell into the group of band geeks, and again,
right.
I love that we're band geeks because it kind of hides all the craziness that goes in the band.
Yeah, it's like, oh, that's just a band thing.
Oh,
that's
they're just band geeks. They're weird. Meanwhile, we're all back there having crazy destruction all over the place, and people are blowing their ears out, just going wild on horns.
Our poor band directors.
Yeah. But I mean, that's the way I look at it. It's just chemicals that are going on, there's an imbalance in kids' brains and hormones and extra estrogen for these male boys, and you know, they're just doing crazy things. Mm-hmm. That's the way I would look at it. Whereas everybody,
I would be like, well, okay, well, what are they going through at home? You know, like nobody's really like that and blah, blah, blah. But I mean, I've had personal experience with stuff like that. Like there's a reason why, like, let's say I wanted so much attention when I was in middle school and then wanted none at all. And why one day or 1 week I'd be like, oh, like, let me talk to everybody. And 1 week I'd be like hiding myself and blah, blah, blah. Like it's because of other things. It wasn't like I couldn't just say, oh, that stuff was happening because of a chemical imbalance. It's like, nah, there were other things that like contributed to me being like that. Like, what's the word? Like exacerbated, like made it worse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the base for all of it was
hormones.
mainly,
Like,
yeah,
because the way I would have
imbalance.
reacted to the situation I was in back then versus now is completely different.
Mm-hmm.
But that also comes from learning what not to do. You know, like I'm the person I am now because I know what not to do from all the stuff like baby Gabby did that she
Yeah.
wasn't supposed to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I always justify myself with saying it was a chemical imbalance. Like here's one that I got some frowns back in college psychology classes for.
God, here we go.
Love. Love is purely an evolutionary tactic.
Yeah, it's meant to like make babies, literally.
Yeah, but it's not treated as such. It's treated as a fairy tale kind of thing that.
But because it feels like that, like, and you know the rush of like being with somebody new and blah blah blah. And I mean, logically, it's like, yeah, you feel that rush because your brain's trying to trick you into like having sex with them as soon as possible and like duplicating like the population and blah blah blah. But like to you, it just feels good. There's a reason that like falling in love feels good, or like kissing somebody new feels good, or having sex feels good. Like it's all for a purpose, but nobody's gonna sit there and like it's not sexy to think about, oh yeah, it's just my hormones, you know, doing this and that. Like,
I mean, it feels good, but at the end of the day, I realize that, oh, okay, that's why, you know, it's just my body telling me, okay, we need to replicate ourselves to survive and to expand the humanity, but we don't need more people.
right.
So I'm like, okay, I'm done. I'm done there. I can handle not doing anything there.
I get that. I get those hormones too. Like for girls, at least for me especially, I think I've talked to you before about like having baby fever and how I'm like, oh, that just means you like a cute baby. And then you get to a certain age and you just like literally have baby fever where like you're looking at babies all the time and you like almost feel like crying because you want your own. And it's like, no, like I don't want one, but this little like primal part of my brain is like, yes, you need one now. Like you need a mate.
Is that purely a female thing? Do you know?
I think guys have it too, but it's super like mild compared to us. Yeah. Cause I went through a whole like month where I was so like sad. Like I would look at a baby. I remember picking up a baby once and I cried. I'm also super emotional. I'd like to say I'm in tune with my emotions, but like the tuning thingy is like way up. And at that time, I just like cried. I'm just like, oh my God, he's so beautiful.
It's like the shower handles where they hot and cold. And there's a millimeter.
Yeah, and it was so bad. And then the next month, I was like, wow, what was wrong with me? And it was just that, like, it must have been some kind of spike in my hormones somehow. Like I was at that age, like ready for birthing, and no, but yeah, and I was just like obsessed with kids, and I still love kids and whatever, and I still think babies are really cute, and I don't really care now. I'm at that age where like I don't really care too much if I have a baby or not. But at the time, I was just like so sad about it. And it's like, no, yeah, it's my brain tricking me into like finding somebody to just be reckless with and make billions of babies with. And
Save humanity is like, we don't need saving anymore, you know. Mm-mm. But that's how crazy hormones are, because you can attest that childbirth is painful. It's one of the most painful things that people experience.
Oof.
And yet
that's what deters me. I don't want to feel pain. I also don't want to gain weight. That's like a super like not selfish, but superficial way of thinking of it. Like I don't want kids because I don't want to get fat. But I do think about that a lot.
No, but the point I'm trying to get to is that it's so ridiculously painful, but yet our body overrides that, and it's like, no, we need more people.
I've heard you get like almost memory loss. Like you can't remember as much how bad that felt because your brain like hides the trauma, so you want more kids. Mm-hmm. And I've never experienced that myself, but I've read a lot about it, and that's scary. Like that your brain literally blocks that out. Like you can barely remember your birth. And you're like, oh, well, it wasn't that bad last time when it was like the worst thing you've ever felt.
I mean, I wouldn't know, and I wouldn't care to find out. I mean, I've seen those studies that women's groups do where they put one of those shocking things
on the guys so they can feel the contractions and stuff.
Yeah, but I feel like I can never trust it.
Why?
Because what if they're trying to emphasize their point way too much and are turning it up on purpose, you know?
What? You really don't think it's that painful?
I'm not very trusting.
That's true. That's true.
They have a bias. That's what I'm trying to say. They have a bias to make it as painful as it needs to be.
But you see so many girls like scream bloody murder for this, and you think it's like, oh, like, you know, it's just like a little pinch.
No, I'm not saying it's not painful. I'm not. I imagine it's gotta be the most painful thing that y'all experience.
Okay.
But when a woman is handling the study, you know, I feel like there's a bias there.
Oh God, it's not a bias. It's called equality.
Then again, even our bodies, like in this region, have a different, you know, different makeup. Yeah, yeah. So that's why I'm like, I don't know about that. People compare it to getting kicked in the balls. It's like,
no, I don't think it's. I'm sure that's really painful too.
But
like, don't get me wrong.
But here is where we meet again, because you wouldn't know.
I wouldn't know.
You would never know.
I've just seen guys like being like crying about it if they get like really bad about it.
Oh, we squirm on the ground.
But then it's just like done. Like imagine being in pain for like 18 hours.
There you go. Yeah. But y'all forget about it.
Lord.
Nowadays, don't they have like a ton of anesthetics and stuff that they...
Yeah, but people have pain in their like, what's it called? The epidural site for years afterwards. Like that needle is like huge and thick because they have to like poke your spine.
It goes in between your spine and it's like a long wire that stays there until after you give birth and then they take it out.
Yeah, I'm more scared of needles than of babies coming out of me.
Personal experience, they had to do it twice.
Oh,
the first time it went, and they tell you don't move because you can be paralyzed because it's literally going in between your spine. Yeah, and it goes in between your spinal cord to numb only the bottom half of your body.
Right. Oh my God.
And I didn't have a choice. I had to get one because I had to have a C-section because it was emergency.
Oh.
So when I was having a panic attack. At the same time where you have to be still, like you can't breathe. And I was having a difficulty time breathing. And so he's like, I am so sorry. It went crooked. So I have to take it out and start all over again.
Dear God.
I could never. And you know, I'm scared of hospitals too because I've read a lot about it and doctors seem to be trying to get you to do C-section more often than trying to get you to do like just a vaginal because it gives them more money. And like mostly it's money. Yeah, it gives them more money, but it's a lot harder on the body because that's like basically major surgery. You know they have to like move all your organs.
They literally take them out, take the baby out, and they put them in.
I'd rather have
and that's completely
a midwife.
unnatural.
I'd rather like our bodies are built to have babies. Now the only reason you should really have a C-section is if you're having complications.
Yeah.
Like I don't see the point in like. Okay, well maybe, I mean, I don't know. I've never had a kid. I know there's like medical things with the baby, like you have to get them at a certain time, like blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, our bodies are built to carry and birth babies naturally.
Yeah, they're built to put up with that.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've heard so many times where like after the C-section, the doctor, and that's from one of my friends specifically, it's like, oh yeah, the doctor told me at the time that like the baby was positioned the wrong way. And once they did the C-section afterwards, it was like, oh no, the baby was fine. You could have pushed it out, but like, at least he's healthy, you know? And when you're a mom, you're like, I'd rather be cut open than like lose my child.
Yeah.
So you're willing to just have that done to you and nobody like bats an eye. And I just refuse. I'd rather have a baby at home.
Is it safer than regular birth?
No, it's more dangerous.
It's more dangerous.
Looking at it surgery-wise, it's more dangerous because you can get a lot more complications.
Yeah.
Right.
With a C-section for the mother. Mm-hmm. But it has
it's like pros and cons.
Yeah, with normal childbirth, it happened to my sister. The baby got stuck.
Right.
Not all the way in, not all the way out.
Like in the canal.
Yeah. So she came out looking like a conehead because the forceps didn't work. They ended up having to use a vacuum, a little vacuum, to finish suctioning the baby out. Then they had to put this thing on her head because she was looking like a conehead because they're soft to be pushed out.
Yeah.
And the cord could have been wrapped around the baby. The oxygen levels dropped because now they're supposed to be starting breathing on their own.
Yeah.
She could have gotten an infection, blood loss. I mean,
Yeah, there's just so many things that could go wrong.
And it's weird because that's something that only happens here in like first world countries. Like in Latin world countries or third world, it's
You just
still
have your
being done.
baby,
Yeah,
right.
It's still natural birth, and I mean the populations are huge. So
Right.
what's the pro?
Our families have like 30 people, so we must be doing something right.
No, it's weird because that's a different type of pain when you have a C-section. It's gotta be like
Right, and then the healing process itself takes like a month or more.
You can heal from the outside, but because they cut through muscle, it can take up to 2 years for it to completely heal to where you're like fine.
And my tia still has pain to this day, like in the little scar. Back when they did it like down instead of sideways.
Well, they started doing it sideways for beauty,
Beauty
the
reasons?
scar,
So it would
the
heal?
scar, so you wouldn't see the scar. But for me, like I didn't have a choice. Like they had to do it the other way because my baby was so big,
Yeah.
and I wasn't. So I have a big ass scar going down from my belly button down, and it was
Ouch, that what my tia has.
21 staples.
Yeah. It just, you make me not want to have a baby.
that's when I'm happy I'm a guy.
Y'all need to be the ones getting birth control. That's another story though. Oop.
Kick us in the balls. We're even.
No. I saw that on social media too. It's like, why are girls being the ones that like are getting birth control? Like, why aren't guys like because they're the ones that can get so many girls pregnant within 9 months, and a girl can only get pregnant every like 9 months at least.
Here's the thing that doesn't get funding, and it's there's a lot of reasons why it doesn't get funding.
Because the government is run by men, and men are
No.
not good with pain or anything.
No.
I'm just kidding.
There's been a lot of studies on a pill that men can take.
Yeah, and they stopped it because the guys couldn't deal with the side effects. They couldn't deal with like mood swings. They couldn't deal with I don't know. They felt a little sick and they were over it.
Aside from that, it's a lot more effective in men because we have a lot less, variables in our chemical imbalances. And since it was less effective, it was a lot less treatment that needed to be had. There wasn't any kind of, we don't have gynecology visits or any cost like that right. Also account to the fact of us having to do the birth protection, And at the end of the day, if all of that is put on women, there's money for gynecologists. There's money for a more reoccurring
There's a
pill.
whole department. It's like a whole women's health thing. Like you go to, like you said, gynecologists, like primary care doctors, like hospital visits. Like there's a whole family planning section, like all of that. And they make a ton of money.
Yeah.
I know some programs like I know the city of Houston does like birth control that's free or super discounted for women of like lower income. But I don't know, that all of that is like a whole nother story because pharmaceuticals are just not, I don't trust them.
Well,
I stopped taking
yeah.
birth control for a while now just because it's scary. The doctors themselves told me, yeah, I wouldn't take that. Like me, myself, I wouldn't take it.
It
Exactly.
messes you up
Exactly.
mentally. It's one of the major causes for depression in women.
There's been studies that like girls that go into a relationship on their birth control and then get off their birth control are less attracted to the people they were going out with.
Because of that imbalance that's going on.
Yeah, because the balance of hormones you had when you were on birth control is different than naturally. So something you found attractive when you were on birth control, you probably wouldn't find attractive when you're off of it. So like it basically changes kind of who you are as a person and how you deal with things.
And assuming it happens vice versa as well.
Yeah, and that's really scary to me. That's why I stopped taking it. I was like, no, I don't. Like, I'm already a little, like, crazy as it is, and I just couldn't, and I noticed I felt a lot better just not taking it. Mm-hmm. I'm just like, it's not natural, to like, stop your period, to, like, do all this stuff. Like, that's why there's condoms, that's why there's other stuff, but I feel like the responsibility should be, like, even. It's not just like, oh, well, did you take your birth control? Like, nah, like, you should have one, too.
Well, it would never happen just because there's a lot more money in treating women for it.
I don't think it'll never happen, but it'll just be a really long time because now there's a lot of pushback for a ton of things.
Yeah, but the people that are in this high chair making the decision
are the guys.
Yeah. Well, not just that. It's not just that. They used to sit in the board for a big pharmaceutical company, you know, or their campaign is being donated to by a pharmaceutical company.
Right.
It's like they have a duty to the person donating the money to them, which is not correct. It shouldn't be that way, but that's simply the reality of it.
Yeah.
If you have a company that sells tires and all of a sudden a guy comes up with a hoverboard car, you know,
You're not going to endorse that because that puts you out of business.
you're going to pay money to the politicians to keep that thing illegal.
Right.
You know?
That's so annoying. I hate politics.
I mean, it's happened a lot. Like right now, my brother brought up to me that California in 2035, they passed a law saying that in 2035
They want clean energy. Like the cars?
Yeah, they're not gonna have cars that run on
gas
yeah,
or petroleum?
Yeah, they're probably just gonna have hybrid cars or pure electric cars. And
Right.
hopefully by that point we do have more variety in that choice. But I firmly believe that that's never gonna happen. I believe that we're not gonna get to that point. Maybe not
Really?
never,
But not as soon as they think.
maybe not 2035.
But that's like 15 years from now.
Yeah, but do you think the guy who's running Ford or GM wants to give up, you know, its price?
I know,
of
but
cars?
that's why like BP and all these like energy companies are going into like more renewable or like cleaner energy. Like
They're going into them, but there's a lot more money to be made in petroleum. And let's keep in mind that BP, Chevron, all these companies, they're not 100% gas. They're not 100%
Right.
petroleum.
they're trying to get ahead of the curve so they can be in front of all these clean energy because it really isn't just a trend though. I don't think it's just a trend. I think it's something.
No, it's definitely not a trend, and Tesla's proven it.
Right.
So if we're talking about cars, at one point somebody had an engine that used to run on pure hydraulic power, pure water, and it was a lot more effective than, you know, like a gas model.
Right, but it just didn't take off, right?
No, it was
It did?
perfect. It was the perfect vehicle. But one of these companies decided, you know what? How much are you willing to sell us this patent for? And they bought the patent. They're not gonna make any money by creating this car because then they're gonna have to compete, and you know, the status quo is always the best. And right now, Ford, you know, or GM or whoever it was that bought this car, they just bought it and scrapped it and put it aside and kept the patent. Nobody else can remake
People are
this car.
trash.
People are trash, but they're making money out of it. That's how you keep a hold of your car empire.
Yeah.
And then a guy like Tesla comes on, and he doesn't want to sell his patent for that electric car, and it turns out people really like it, and it blows up. And now it's worth, I think,
No, it's worth a lot. It's an expensive car.
I think it's worth more than Ford and GM, like the
Yeah.
company as a whole.
I'm sure.
And so now they can't buy it. Now they can't do anything. Now they have to compete with it. And so now
Right.
Ford and GM are coming up with electric cars.
Or like hybrid cars.
Yeah, hybrid cars. But imagine if Tesla had been like that first guy with the water engine and just sold it.
Then it would have never seen the market.
No, Ford wouldn't have made that car. They
Right.
would have just scrapped it. There's that moth. Freaking moth. Attack of the Moth today. That's gonna be the episode name. But you see it? Yeah. And it's running right in front of the cameras too. Whatever.
That's okay. Now for our special guest.
Mothman right here. Yeah. Cryptids found them. No, but it's what happens whenever a company has to make a decision based on the income margin at the end of the year. One thing that happened, and I'm sure there's no litigation because it was proven case and it's already been settled, or it's quote unquote in the process of being settled. It was Ford released a car. I want to say it was the Focus or the it had a Latin name. It wasn't Fiesta. No, they released the car, right? They were months from releasing the car. The car was already built, and at the last minute, they found that it had a very defective flaw that I think it had to do with the braking system or something critical.
Right.
And they were faced with a decision. Either we stop production and lose, let's say, $1 billion, right, in the early advanced sales, and have to hold this car for later, or we can just release this car, and the insurance that we're gonna have to pay all the people that die and crash, it's gonna be less than $1 billion. And so they were faced with that decision, and they took the latter. They released the car. And a lot of people got into a lot of accidents. A lot of people ended up filing for suits and everything.
But it was cheaper than it would have been to just rebuild the whole thing from scratch.
It ended up costing them a lot more, you know, and that's where there's a little bit more justice.
Right.
But they were willing to make that decision that, okay, you know what, the insurance that we're going to have to pay is less than remaking this whole car, you know.
It just sucks that everything's about money. And, I mean, it's good that you understand that side of things, but, like, to me, it's just, like, I'm outraged by it, you know, like how is money more important than, like, people? You know, we could solve, like, the world's hunger crisis, like, if we wanted to, like, it could be done within a month or two, like, because, like, there's enough money, there's enough housing available, there's enough land and food. But, like, money, you know, like, I'm not making a profit by selling all the food that I'm throwing away. So I'm just going to throw it away instead of giving it to the homeless people.
The problem is that you're dealing with other people's money. Like, you're making a decision based on other people's money. And other people always have another influence. It's the reason why Chick-fil-A is so successful. Chick-fil-A never sold itself to be public. Chick-fil-A is owned by a private you know, family. Nobody else can tell Chick-fil-A what to do. If Chick-fil-A opened itself to a public, you know, interest, and it ended up having, you know, shareholders and stocks and everything, they would have to open on Sundays because the stockholders are losing out on a lot of money by closing on Sundays, and a lot of their values would change. But Chick-fil-A decided, okay, you know what? I don't want to go from having $1 million to $10 billion overnight just for, you know, losing out on what my main values are.
Yeah.
The founder of Chick-fil-A told his sons that Chick-fil-A is going to be passed down to their sons, and the sons had to sign something where they're saying they're not going to sell it.
Right.
You know.
That's good. Somebody has, like, some values, but they support Trump, but
well, whatever, you know.
Everybody can support whoever they want.
At the end of the day.
Yeah.
But that's what happened there with Tesla. Tesla fights a lot to not have his shareholders influence what they're doing with their cars.
Right.
Elon Musk fights very hard to keep that his own right, you know. Is the reason why you can't buy SpaceX. You can't buy any shares of SpaceX because SpaceX has its own vision in mind. Elon Musk wants to go to Mars. Let's say that's his vision. If somebody else came in, they'd see that there's a lot more money in having, what do they call it? Commercial flights
like
to space.
Tourist things or whatever, like that makes more money, but it's like, that's not what I want to do.
That makes a lot more money, but they wouldn't get to Mars by doing that. You know, they'd have to focus on doing that, and then SpaceX would just be that.
That would be so fun, though.
That would be fun, but, you know, do you want to progress the human race, get to Mars?
Yes, I would.
I think at some point humanity might, if we don't kill ourselves before.
The way this year is going, I'm scared for next year.
2020.
Jesus.
I mean,
round two.
Yeah.
2020 times
2021. Everybody had 2020 vision at the beginning.
I remember being so optimistic. Like, it was such a nice, like, New Year's party. We were so, like, grateful, and then everything just went to shit. Like, just
my god,
absolute shit. I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to be cursing. We need a swear jar. I didn't bring money.
I need to put one of these as a beep, but just whenever.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, we were expecting this year to be cool. But what were we saying before that? Yeah, anytime that you are dealing with other people's money, you're not gonna be able to do the goal that you wanted to in the beginning. So if somebody like Disney decided, oh, you know what, we have a lot of money, let's donate a bunch of it to a third world country and let's solve a lot of the problems there.
Yeah, they're
not going to be able to do it because their shareholders are going to only want to donate a certain amount of money, and
only the things that benefit them.
Only the things that benefit them, and they're going to transfer that money over to some corporation that's going to do their own thing with it. By the time that, I mean, we all know this, that always happens with donations. By the time it reaches the actual goal, before it reaches, it has to pay for the employees that the nonprofit has to pay for all of that. I've done nonprofit accounting, and what you have there is not a net income sheet. It's a net balance sheet. And at the end of the day, that has to be zero. Mm-hmm. That has to have first paid for its employees, first paid for its costs, operating and all of that. Mm-hmm. And then it has to, issue its money out to whatever, the main foundation was for. But so that's how somebody like Akon was doing a couple of years ago, where he himself used his own money and his own people to do a whole bunch of wiring and lighting in Africa. Like it was a whole thing that he did by himself. Somebody like Bill Gates has the Bill Gates Foundation, and they do a lot of work too, like a lot of scholarships and everything. But that's also handled by other people, of course, because Bill Gates doesn't have the time to be, handling his own donations.
Right.
They do a lot of good work though. But in terms of a big company, like you couldn't solve the world's problems with a big company because you're also putting that big company's interests at risk and other competing companies' interests at risk.
I wonder how you even start a company like that. But it all sounds fine and dandy when you're like, oh, well, let's just help the homeless people. Let's just do this and that. But like, I wouldn't think of the logistics. I would just be like, well, we have money, so let's just go. And you'd be like, no, well, we need to fill out the roster, who's helping us, and what districts are we doing, and what's the scope of this, and what's our budget. And I'm like, no, let's just help.
It takes a whole lot of money to get a can of food down to another continent when they need it.
Right.
A lot more than the can is worth, So it's just impossible to logistically do that without losing a ton of money in the in-between. Mm-hmm.
And that just goes back to how you would analyze things in the first place, because I would just be like, hey, this is what I want to do with the world. And you're like, all right, then let me get my spreadsheets.
Let me sit down. Where's my calculator? Okay, come on. No, I realized that I operate more analytically whenever I first joined my first job, which was a grocery store by the name of Fiesta Mart here in Texas. And I started as a psychology major in college. I wanted to study psychology. I wanted to get into the minds of people. And I decided the best way to help me out, practice that would be to work at a store where I knew it was going to be a fight every day with crazy clients. And it was a little Fiesta store, a grocery store that was behind my house that I knew had a lot of crazy clients. I went into the courtesy booth where you do a lot of the operating stuff for the store. Mm-hmm. You do a lot of more numbers type transactions than cashiers. And I figured out I like this a lot more than dealing with the customers. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's just a lot, dealing with people in general. I don't mind it that much, but I'm really good at dealing with people.
Yeah.
But I got better at it once I worked at a country club. That's what really helped me, because I went from McDonald's to lifeguarding, and then from lifeguarding I did lifeguarding for a while, and then I worked at a customer service thing, at a candle store, mm-hmm. and then I ended up going to this interpreter thing now. But the country club was what helped me the most. You have to tell people things in a super nice way, even if you just hate them. And they could piss you off, and I'm just like, yes, ma'am, I'm so sorry for the inconvenience. Let me get somebody to help you with that right away. And then in my head, I'm like, you stupid. I'm just mad. But I learned how to put on a good face. So now I can just do it naturally. And I think that's what helped me be outgoing too. It's just I learned how to fake it. I learned how to fake it really, really well.
Well, we touched on this on the introverts versus introverts episode, unreleased. Where, you are a lot more open to talking to people than I am.
Right.
I'm a little bit more closed off and looking at things, but you're out in the weeds and
But I think I had more opportunity to learn how to do that. I've learned so much.
Or the grocery store beat it out of me. Yeah. Oh, man.
I remember your rant about that place.
I was a very gentle person before I dealt with
those people. Wasn't. No, he wasn't.
I was kind and compassionate.
But that store sure broke your spirit. He loved the coworkers, but he hated, everything else.
Oh no, I like the numbers.
The numbers.
No, it's one of those things where, again, it comes down to our brain chemistry, where I'm not so extroverted. I like to stick to my own things and do puzzles and do all of that. I like math. Like, what? Like, but no, like my brain doesn't want to interact, doesn't want to socialize, doesn't want to.
Right.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side of that, I do like, I want to hang out with people, and I want to just be outside and do all this stuff.
I hate our brains for that, because they have these certain weaknesses, like the chemical imbalance, hormones, and then the one thing that'll cause you to destroy your entire life and career and everything you've worked for, those extra 5 minutes of sleep.
Yep. Uh-huh.
Like, does your brain not understand that you're this close, to destroying your life over those 5 minutes of sleep?
But if you're tired, you're just tired. Like, that's the thing too. Like, I didn't realize how important it was to like get your 7-8 hours to sleep.
I hate
to
them.
drink like water and to like eat healthy. Like, you actually have to take care of yourself. Like,
They're such a waste of time, though.
but I just started doing that like maybe a year ago. That's so late. We're like 23 now. Like, who didn't teach us this before? This is crucial information. We would have been so much more productive in high school, in college. Like you just have to have such a routine for yourself, and that sucks.
Yeah, but we've always been robbed of our free time. We've never had free time.
That's true up until recently.
Yeah, until recently.
Because of band and everything else.
In high school, or even if you weren't in band, in high school, you go to school from 8 to 3, 3:30. Yeah. And then afterwards, you do your recreational activities, your extracurricular activities. You go to class, you go to band, you're in football, you're in track, whatever. And then you get home and you do homework.
Right.
By that time, it's 9 o'clock. You should be going to bed already. But where's your free time? You've been robbed of your free time. Your free time is the weekend.
I don't remember going to bed till like 1 a.m.
Yeah.
My eye bags were like right here.
Yeah, because you want to make up for that lost time.
Right, because you feel like you don't have enough time.
Exactly. And at, it's 12, it's 1 a.m. Who's going to tell you what to do at that time? It's your free time. Whenever,
and now you have to like parent yourself, like, no, it's late, like you need to go to bed.
Well, no, that's why I don't want to go back to school, because now I have my free time. Now I get out of work at a certain time, and then the rest of the day, that's my time.
Right.
Nobody's taking that time.
But you still tell yourself, like, hey, like, it's 11, like, we need to start getting ready.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. But because I don't have to make up for it anymore.
Yeah. Before it's like, damn, I need to squeeze in at least 2 episodes or something.
Yeah, because you wake up in the morning super early, you go to school, you get back, it's already 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock,
Right.
And where's my free time? You're going to make up for it. You're going to stay up till 1 on your phone.
How did we do homework in high school?
What do you mean?
Did we do homework in high school?
Did we do homework? Yes, we did. What do you mean? We did a ton of homework.
Because you talk about, I'm just, gosh, I don't remember anymore, but I remember we'd go to band practice, get off when it was dark, and then go home.
And do your homework.
No, how did
You
I
never
pass?
did?
No. I got home and I laid down.
That's the one thing I hated about school. Always homework. Like, that's my time.
I don't think I did homework.
Yeah, you did. Yeah,
I think I think in the morning during like lunch or in band in the band room I'd like rush to do my homework.
Really?
Yeah.
Or maybe you didn't stress about it as much as I did.
I don't think I stressed. I just decided to not think about it. Like, that's all it was, because I remember that being a problem. Like, I didn't do homework, or I'd wake up earlier and like my mom would drop us off at school like 30 minutes early, and I'd just be at the like cafeteria
with
desk
everybody else.
like, oh, what did you get for this one? Yeah, that's a lot of memories I didn't remember that I had. Like, just people at a circle, like, hey, what did you get for this question? What did you get for this question? Yeah, I didn't know homework.
No, I remember my homework deep. Like, that's one of my
I did
traumas.
homework maybe on the weekends when we had weekends off. Sundays. That was like catch up on homework stuff.
Yeah, because every week we had a show or something. You don't remember? Gave us a ton of homework.
She gave homework?
Like huge projects, like multiple page essays and stuff.
No.
No. Wow. Okay. Maybe
This is why she sent me out of class. This is why she's like, here's 10 extra points. Just please make a poster. You have to do something with your time
it
here.
might be the case that I just overstressed about it, and like now it's like deep in my mind, like you did so much homework, but maybe in reality I didn't. Then again,
don't remember,
I
to
was
be
always
honest.
trying to be on top of my grades because my family is very like traditional and like
Yeah.
very, you need to be a straight A student, and I was just not
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
No, as long as I was passing, because in middle school, elementary and middle school, my parents were like that. My mom was not like that. She was like, if you get less than like an A, it's like, well, why didn't you do better? Well, why didn't you do better? And then in high school, she just kind of stopped asking. So if my grades would, but in my head, I already had like that instilled in me.
Mm-hmm.
So if it got below like a 75, I'm like, oh shit, like I'm messing up. Like I need to get better. But so I would eventually, come the end of the year, I would catch up on everything and pass. That's the only reason why I was ranked 15 instead of like 1 or 2 is because I didn't feel like it. Like that's all it was. I was ranked 15. And you remember the people that were ranked in like first and second and third and whatever. Yeah, I was ranked 15.
Okay,
junior
then.
year, like beginning of junior year of high school, I think I was like 5.
Really?
Yeah, and then I let myself drop because I didn't care.
Senioritis.
Yeah, senioritis, and I just like it wasn't worth it to me. I knew I was going to be top 10%, like, and I wasn't just that adamant to get all my stuff done. Like I wanted to have fun, you know, like I don't know, it just wasn't my thing. But I always thought about it. I was like, you know what, I could have been number 1 or 2 or whatever if I had like applied myself.
Even then, you were number 15. That's pretty high, considering there was like 340 of us, 330. Yeah. Because I was one person behind the top 10%.
Yeah.
I was telling you, it's the only reason I didn't get to like the
Like
university.
automatically accepted to everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm happy I didn't, because that university I was going to go to, I don't know.
You just have a thing with them. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah. I have a grudge against them for rejecting me.
It'll never die.
It'll never die forever. But no, it's probably that. I probably stressed about it too much, because if you're number 15, then you were way better than I was in school. Then again,
But I was just really good at testing. I'm just really good at things like randomly. Like I was really good at taking standardized tests. Like I always did super well on those, and those would shoot my grades up. I could do no homework and just take the quizzes and take the test and take the STAR test, and I'd be good. Which is why, like, because like I said, like the audience knows now, I don't do homework. So how did I end up 15?
I was bad at it. I was bad at standard. I was bad at exams. I think I was good in assignments and not exams.
That's the thing.
That changed in college. I was better at exams in college than in high school.
And that's the point system thing. Because in high school, even in high school, like your tests were worth a lot more. And they really cared if you passed the standardized test. They could give a shit about everything else. But if you passed the standardized test and made the school look good, like you would pass on to the next level.
Yeah.
So I always made sure to do really well on those. Like I took it super seriously. But everything else was just like, like whatever.
Yeah, in high school, the main focus was the exams.
Exactly.
And in college, the main focus was the assignments. Because
Yeah.
I remember in college, for a lot of my classes, you could get by with a 70-something if you had gotten, all of your homework done.
Right. Like if
and
you did all
not
your
taken-
assignments, then like you could get like a 60 on your midterm and still be good.
Yeah, easily.
Yeah.
Because right there, you could quantify it easily even,
Right. You just add up all the points.
Yeah, if the assignment was worth 20% of your overall grade, you just got to do 50 of it. That's already 10 points.
Right.
But in high school, again, they hold you to the assignments. And I hated that because some assignments were just not worth it. Like, do you remember in the English classes in middle school where you had to keep track of how much you read? Like,
I made up books.
Seriously?
Yeah, and I loved reading, but I hated reading because somebody told me to do it.
Yes,
I have a problem with
yes.
authority. I'll just, my name is Gabby and I have a this problem. Yeah, but I don't like people telling me what to do. And I used to love reading. I was in book clubs in middle school. But the second you told me, like, oh, you have to write these down, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't read the whole summer just because somebody told me I had to do it.
Yeah.
And I would just, like the week before, I just make up names or I just look them up. And I'm like, oh, well, we have this book at the house and I saw this book somewhere, blah, blah, blah. And nobody checks it. They just want to see a bunch of words on a page. Like literally.
And a parent's signature.
Yeah. And I would sign for my mom. I was bad. You know how many field trips I went to that I wasn't supposed to go to?
You were just good at cursive.
Yeah.
No,
I'm good at the legal things.
Likewise, I liked reading, but I didn't like reading something that somebody assigned to me to read. Like, that's not interesting.
Same thing with essays. Like, I liked writing, but I hated writing when it was a prompt. When it was something that would be evaluated and, like, tested on, like, I hated it.
Yeah.
But I remember I used to write a lot when I was little, and I stopped liking it when it became like such a huge deal in like middle school and high school. Like I just didn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah, it was a ridiculous focus in like high school English classes. Like in the exams you had to write like 4 essays within 2 hours on
I've
weird
never
new
been
topic.
so stressed.
It was so
God.
dumb. Like we do a lot. Maybe it was important back in the day when phones weren't around, when the internet wasn't around, and that's the only writing people did in their lives. Like,
but some jobs still use that, like
some jobs still use
reporters
that.
and like all these like column persons,
columnists.
Yeah, that. Like,
yeah.
Like there's still like writing is still a good skill to have, but they just like.
Writing is still a good skill to have, but we get more practice of it now for them to be testing us like we don't even do it. Like before messaging, before emails, before all of that, like people didn't write much. Like I mean, my parents don't write that much. They text.
Yeah.
Like, all of our practice is from texting, and it's not like adults say where we're just LOL, RFL, or whatever, you know, like we're writing, you know, proper words. We're writing with good structure for the most, you know, most times. But that's a lot more practice than people got, you know. The
best skill I learned in English class was how to structure a formal email. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Because I use that a lot. Because we email a lot of people all the time. So I know, like, start with a greeting, then, like, the comma in the paragraph, and then, like, sincerely, blah, 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 or, like, best regards, whatever. And I write like that, and it looks nice, you know? Like, that's a useful quality or, like, a useful thing. But everything else, like, I don't really use. I mean, in college, they still kind of, like, hey, you need to have your thesis and your body or whatever. But they're not as, like... I want to say different words, but I don't want to say it. They're not as much of a stickler about it, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, nobody really makes a point of it, but people don't realize that we write now. Like, people today write actively, text, type, email, you know, write more than anybody has ever written in the history of humanity. Like, nobody has a better proficiency of how words are supposed to be, you know, connected. Maybe dialect, because I have an accent. You're going to hear a lot of nobody has a better, you know, understanding of how words interact with each other, the meanings of words, and how you can play around with them than people today. There's an entire... We have maybe like 3 different languages within English.
Right.
And that's the formal English that we use with people and professionals. Meanwhile, there's the English that we use with our peers, and then there's the English that we use, you know, with random strangers, with, you know, that's that broken English that you speak with maybe your family. Like, we understand that one word can have a ton of different meanings, even though the Webster's Dictionary only has one. Like, we use words in a way that nobody has ever used before.
Yeah.
And so... for teachers to look at us and give us an assignment where it's like, okay, you have these 4 topics, you need to talk to them the way we're teaching you to talk to them. It's important for like professional speak.
Right, but most people really won't go into a career where they'll use that, you know?
Most people don't, you know. Mine does. I do have to stay sharp on the way that I speak, you know.
Right, but it's not like thesis, blah, blah, blah. It's just like write coherent papers with like your point. And usually it's like, hey, be brief and to the point.
Yeah.
Like people only have like 2 minutes in an elevator type stuff. Like, so just like shoot your shot and like call it a day. You don't need to elaborate. Because what those essays taught me was to bullshit for like 3 pages and then make my conclusion when I could have said all of that within 3 paragraphs and like called it a day.
Instead of writing something that was actually meaningful, we were writing as much as we could in this little time, using the biggest words as possible.
I remember your essays, you're like, look at this. And it was like, I can't even give an example. It was just like so many words. You could be like, I like the color red. And it's like, I sincerely, in fact, I absolutely, positively, without a doubt, like the color crimson, reddish.
In terms of the spectrum of colors that are available for choosing.
Like such a long thing. And it's like, okay. Like so much so that it loses the meaning of what you were trying to say in the first place.
I mean, at some points I was just trolling. I would write like 4 pages of nothing, quantity over quantity.
It's like 100.
Yeah. They wouldn't read it. They just put 100 over it.
It looks like you put a lot of thought into it. I was like, ma'am.
I'm gonna bleep out her name.
Please. No, I loved her.
Yeah, no, but we're making her sound terrible.
No, she was so sweet.
But yeah, they would just teach you to BS a paper around, instead of teaching you to come up with meaningful stuff. Like, what's the point of being able to write 4 essays within 2 hours if none of them make any sense,
Right.
And your thesis made sense, but it was pulled out of your butt, like it meant nothing. Meanwhile, now, like, without being introduced to somebody that's telling us, hey, you have to write this about this and that, like, we're able to come up with an entire vocabulary on our own.
Right.
Through evolution. Like, that's texting. Like, one of the best examples is that the joke of, teacher, can I go to the restroom? And the teacher's like, may I go to the restroom? Like, who are you kidding with may I go to the restroom?
Like, nobody says that anymore.
Nobody says that. That's antiquated. That's old. That's a waste of time. That's a waste of space in your brain to come up with may I. Like, we're not asking if I am, capable of going to the restroom. We're asking if we can. We're asking for permission. And to hold on to those tiny little stickler details, I think is foolish. And I think it's it doesn't help vocabulary evolve.
No, yeah, I agree with you. Like 100%. It just doesn't make sense to me why they would put rules in like that.
And a lot of days in professional speak nowadays, you're mainly trying to be more respectful than anything, that's the main point today. That's what should be taught, rather than how many essays could you come up with in 2 hours. It's ridiculous.
Like, it's a freaking world record.
That's a goofy thing that I hated back in high school.
Yeah, and you would see somebody finish and turn in their essay like fast, and you're like, what the hell? They're like gods. Like, look at them walking to the front of the class with their essays. But, like, what did they actually write? They filled the page with words, but, like, does it mean anything?
Yeah. Those AP exams were the most BS thing I did in high school. Because not even in college did I have a class as difficult and as scripted as those AP exams.
Right.
They would ask you about weird things that your teacher had to guess that they were going to be in the exams. Like the letters of, like, George Washington's wife to George Washington. Yeah. They would ask you, like, okay, so they would tell the teacher, hey, this is what the previous 3-year exams were about. And so come up with your teaching course based on that. And so the English teacher has to guess what type of conversations are going to be in the exam, only for you to study on 500 different things, different trivia. It was literally trivia, like in your class year. And at the end of the year, take the exam. And then it's asking you about not George Washington's wife, somebody else's wife writing a letter to her sons that are in war. And it's like, okay, you didn't teach us anything about this. And that once, it gets graded, it's going to get graded by some random people that we all know. They just pick those people out of, random lineups. We've seen how they do standardized testing grading, on the news. The Craigslist articles and all of that.
Jesus Christ.
And they teach, like, the graders that, hey, you're grading too many A papers. You need to start grading some B papers. You need to start grading some C papers.
Like, why does it matter? You pick them to grade, so let them grade.
Yeah, it's absurd. And
Like when you take a test and you're like, shit, I've circled A too many times. I could probably use a different letter now, even if it's the correct answer.
4 A's in a row, something is wrong. Yeah. It's goofy. It's a dumb way of looking at things. And that's why I hated high school, but I loved college. I enjoyed college so much because the teachers were able to draw on their own, curriculum. The tests were tests that the teachers made for the most part. The assignments were assignments that the teacher made. Maybe that day on the spot, those were the best because they taught you the most and they were based on the conversation that we had that day. I had a teacher that for the mid-year assessment, she gave us an essay and she put a song, and it was for a political science class, and it was about why America had its revolution, all that, the reasons and facts behind it. And she put a song and then made us write our essay based on a question that she asked us that day. And that essay had to do with what she had been teaching us. It wasn't some dude that came up with, oh, let me ask them about George Washington's wife.
Right, like it was something relevant and something you might have actually had an opinion, like thoughts on.
Yeah.
You just don't have to come up with it on the spot.
Yeah, and part of it is because they are administering like thousands of AP exams to thousands of students with hundreds of different teachers teaching differently. They have to keep a standard, but it's pretty dumb when you don't know what they're going to teach you and they pull out some random trivia.
Right.
Like those AP exams were so much more difficult than any exam I took in college. And mainly it was because the stuff that was on the exam wasn't relevant to the stuff that we learned in class. It wasn't that our teachers weren't good. They were amazing. What was his name?
The English teacher?
Yeah.
You went to the coffee shop with him to read something?
Aguilar. He was so good at teaching that HISD took him from the school and sent him to teach.
Where did he go? Like Norway?
Somewhere like
out of the country to help train other teachers on how to teach.
Other teachers.
That was badass. But he was so good and really effective. He was one of my favorite teachers.
Yeah, I learned more in his class than in most other high school classes. And even then, all of us, one person passed the AP exam.
Yeah.
Because most of the AP exam was just, okay, you have to guess what's going to be on the exam. And then try to teach your students based on that. It was ridiculous and it was absurd. Meanwhile, in college, the teacher is coming up with the exam, and so they're teaching us what's going to be on the exam. And they're not teaching to the exam. They're teaching to the assignments. The exams are just to prove, okay, you're capturing what I'm trying to teach you. It's pretty goofy because high school teachers nowadays don't give lectures. They're not allowed to give lectures. They just give you assignments.
I mean, I'm in the actual like education program now, and the way my classes are being taught is like to be really culturally diverse, and conscious of like different cultures and blah blah blah, and how to make your learning or your teaching relevant to stuff going on in everyday life. And it's really cool to see, because it's like, dang, like, was this being taught to teachers before, or is this more recent? Like, hey, like, you need to not just teach based on the standards, but teach based on like what your classroom looks like. Like, if your classroom has different cultures, incorporate that. Like, if instead of just like reading from a textbook or giving them worksheets or blah blah blah. And we're constantly, a lot of my assignments are like, hey, look at what this teacher did. How would you make it better? How would you change it in a way that impacts your students so they care about what they're learning, so it applies to them more than just like the content? And I think that's really cool, because that's the kind of teacher that I want to be, is something that matters more than just like a lecture.
Yeah, they've got to be adjusting it now that they've seen that the old model, well, not the old model, but this model that they introduced where the district controls everything about the teaching experience, that didn't work because not every student is the same.
Yeah.
And packing classes with 40 kids to one teacher for a 45-minute period to get to all those kids, it's goofy.
No way.
It's pretty foolish. It only works if you're in a lecture type environment. And high school classes aren't lecture type environments. They're assignment type environments. You're supposed to have these certain, huge amount of assignments per student per year, and make your grade based on that instead of a point system that actually works, like every university does. why do we have our universities teach in a different way than, you know, the public schools and private schools too? Well, private schools are held to a different standard, but public schools have to go based on the district, you know?
Right.
It's pretty silly, and I don't like it. And a lot of it is also money. Again, let's go back to money.
It's always money, and I don't like it. But you understand it.
I get it.
You don't agree with it necessarily, but you understand it.
I don't agree with it, but I get why it happens that way, because a school's not gonna get funding if the students aren't passing the end of year assessment. You know.
Yeah.
Then the problem is the people who are writing the end of the year assessment. You know. Mm-hmm. Because they're not teaching. They're teaching based on what they think we should be learning.
And they're teaching kids how to pass a test. That's it. Because like I said, I'm really good at passing tests. I'm really good at like process of elimination, like all of this stuff. Like I can get a right answer even without knowing what the answer is, just because I know how questions are structured.
Yes.
Like, I'm really, really good at that. But that's not a good skill to have, because like, yeah, I passed my test, but I learned absolutely nothing. And in college, most of the tests are open-ended, and you either know it or you don't, and they're free response. So then I'm screwed, because I've been training for like 12 years of my life or more to know how to answer multiple choice and to get really good grades. And it gives me this false sense of like security and like achievement that really meant absolutely nothing. Like, oh yeah, you were a gifted and talented student supposedly, but I was just good at answering multiple choice questions.
Yeah, you were literally good at the trick of the test.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, like shit, like I cracked the code of like STAR testing and tax testing and any other kind of testing, but what about the content, you know? Like, you asked me what I learned in like government or in, I didn't take stats. What did I take? Calculus. I took pre-cal. Mm-hmm. I didn't learn a damn thing. I don't remember.
You're talking about
he rode a Harley Davidson.
Yeah.
Oh, he was so cool. I loved him so much, but I didn't really learn.
You know, I passed that test, that class really good, but I don't remember most of the things we learned there. Like,
yeah, I just remember he was really nice, and I remember Caitlin was in there.
He was really cool. But I don't know. It's just a lot. There was one point in high school where I was stressing out because I was missing three credits to graduate, and one of them was an SAT class. No, not SAT. SATs are the ones that you take to go to college, right? SATs.
SAT is a test that you take for...
Yes, SAT, yeah. Yeah, like a wasted period of, you know, my class just to learn how to pass this one test.
Right.
And it's not because the content of the test was difficult. It's because the content of the test was written in a way to be, you know,
Yep.
tricky.
So you had to learn how to crack the code and answer the questions by process of elimination and learn absolutely nothing from it.
Exactly. At that point, you're not learning what's on the test.
And then we made up credits by taking online classes on like a laptop, and I finished all the assignments by looking up the answers within like a month. So then the rest of the year was a free period, and I don't know how I did that, but they were fine with it. It was like, well, you did your class, you did your credit you were missing to graduate, and the whole thing just seemed so pointless to me.
I took 2 years of Spanish.
Why?
I'm Mexican. It's like, yeah, and I did it in like a month because everything was online. It was just like, okay, fill it in. Okay, you did it. Okay, good. You have your credit. We can legally tell the state that we gave you a credit, and
that
so
you took a foreign language. It's like foreign. That's like my first language.
Yeah, that's.
I took Mandarin. I took Chinese.
You went with it, yeah.
And I only remember numbers, and I like something. I like things. Like I like rats. I think I only remember that because I prank called a Chinese restaurant and I started speaking Chinese, so they spoke back and I was like, I like rats. And they hung up.
And see, that was an actually useful class to take.
For pranks.
If you had continued with it, because it was 2 years of it, right?
Yeah. I would have done. Remember that guy? He was really cool, and he actually got to study abroad in China, and we did like a FaceTime call with him in the auditorium. I could have done that, but I didn't submit my assignment because I was scared to go because I had a boyfriend. I would have been there. I really would have been there. I could have done so much better. I stood in my own way because of boys.
There's a lot of those classes that were actually useful, you know, and that you could take to a career. but they got rid of a lot of them. Woodworking.
Now it's like a maritime school.
Now it's a maritime school.
Yeah, because it used to be an education school. Like
yes.
the focus was on education,
which
and it was
really.
like a fast track. It really wasn't. Our class that was like a fast track to like, because we learned childhood development and like psychology of like early childhood, whatever, and like disability stuff. Because I remember all of those assignments. But none of those. First of all, I'm an actual education major. None of those credits transferred. They're counted as electives.
None of the actual teachings applied.
Nope. And now it's a maritime program with the boating.
The Port of Houston.
The boating school. Yeah, the Port of Houston.
I actually like that. I like that they did that instead of the teaching program, because the Port of Houston does give, there's a lot of people that graduated with us that were working at the Port of Houston when we graduated.
Yeah.
And those jobs are pretty good. They're pretty good blue collar jobs. Yeah, it's very.
I was just upset at it at the time because I don't like change. I don't like change. I was so upset. I was like, why did they change it to maritime? Nobody cares about boats. And then my boyfriend's a whole maritime major, but we're not going to talk about that.
Again, money.
Money, yeah, because they make good money.
They also invested quite a bit of money into Austin.
The school?
Yeah.
Really?
They had in the third floor, about half of it was nothing but, I don't think some rooms in it were like actual simulation rooms. You remember where like it was crane jobs and stuff like that? Yeah.
I just remember learning how to tie knots and what the flag alphabet meant. That's all I remember. I was in a maritime class once with I think his name was.
I never took a maritime class.
No. He had like long hair and a long beard, and he was really cool. People always straightened my hair in that class. So, it was a great time.
Pretty useful learning, right? Yeah.
There was a salon back there, and he didn't mind. He was like, all right, as long as you're doing your work, did you turn in your worksheet for the day? Yes. All right, go ahead.
Yeah. There's a lot of useful classes there, but I feel like most of them could have been replaced with... I learn a lot more every day now on YouTube.
They should have still had like a home ec. I think that would have been really cool.
Yes.
Useful things like how to do my taxes, how to file for health insurance, how to like all of this shit. Like I had to learn that from mistakes, like literally, and that is actual things that we're going to use for the rest of our lives. I barely learned how to file my own taxes. I barely got health insurance at 23 years old. Like, I barely figured out how to start a savings account and how to, like,
personal
regularly...
finance.
Yeah, all of that would have been super useful information. But no, we have to learn about boats. Like, I'm sorry. I have nothing against the maritime industry, but not everybody's going to do that.
No, not everybody. And let's not even talk about that one, because that one can actually be applied to something. Right. The SAT class that I took.
Yeah, that was, like, useless.
If you had a tax class, and keep in mind, tax isn't a subject of controversy. Tax law is law. There's nothing you can do about tax law. Like, if you just taught students tax law, we wouldn't have as many issues as people have every year when they go and file their taxes. There's one organization in this country and all over the world that's gonna get you no matter who you are, and that's the IRS. You don't mess with the IRS. And I'm saying it because I like I mentioned, I was a tax preparer, and I was fixing a lot of the mistakes that little mom and pop shops did. Whenever you went and got your taxes filed, you said, "Oh, this person could get me $2,000 more."
But it's because they were kind of breaking the law.
It's because they were making a lot of little nasty tricks that you shouldn't be making with your taxes. They'd come to me. I used to work for a company I'm not gonna name, but they used to come to us. And we would solve the problem and get back to the IRS. And it would cost that person money. It would cost them to send back the refunds, plus penalties, plus interest.
Right.
It's a lot of mistakes that people can avoid if you just, instead of having them, sit down how to take a test, if you instead taught them taxes or personal finance. At what point in high school did you learn about interest rates?
Nope.
At what point? I
think they might have mentioned it briefly once in a math class. Like, these percentages can work like this thing. And nobody paid attention. But if we would have known, like, hey, you have to do this every single year. Like, for something you have to do so often, nobody talks about it.
Yeah, for something that literally controls your lives.
Yeah.
Like, if you get
and
a
credit
home,
scores, right? And how to manage a mortgage and how to like find your first homes and all this stuff. I think the closest we got to that was one assignment with our education teacher with Casiano, saying like, hey, like imagine you just had a kid and you're by yourself. Like, what would you do? And we researched, oh, hey, there's a cheap apartment here and I would work here and daycare costs this much. And that's the closest we ever got to like realistic planning.
And here's the thing, that's a dual credit class. She came up with that assignment.
She came up with that, right?
And the state like, didn't tell her to give her that assignment. Props for her,
because that was like actually applicable.
That was the first time we were tackled with having a budget for life.
Exactly. And as much as at the time I didn't like that class, I don't know what was wrong with me. Now I love her.
Hormones, chemical imbalance.
Yeah, but at the time I was like, this is so stupid. But I do my own budget. That's how I figured out how to get my apartment, was comparing the cheapest and like the highest and like the area and blah, 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 and seeing where I would work and how much I would make and how much gas would be and blah, blah, blah. And that's just because with that little template we made with her, like that budget. And if I hadn't had that, I would have had to just figure it out from scratch. And I'm sure I would have, but like more classes should be like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly. Absolutely. Like if you get a home, the most important thing that you're going to figure out in your house is going to be what interest rate you're going to get.
Right.
And based on that, that's going to be based on your credit. Your credit is incredibly important for you never to have heard of it before leaving high school. They leave credit teaching up to the bank that you're going to go to when you first get your first credit card. And it's going to be like a Chase Slate card.
Right.
With 0.0 nothing. It's just to build credit. You're just in debt, just to build credit.
And the same with health insurance. Like, nobody knows what a deductible is or what co-insurance means or what the percentage out-of-pocket cost is. I learned that recently because of my interpreter job, because I heard people that only speak Spanish struggle with it and get it explained in a really like simple way by the people that work for these companies. And I learned that way, but I learned that as like a little fly on the wall on somebody else's conversation.
Yeah.
But nobody taught me that in high school. Or in college where we should have learned it,
Yeah.
Like, I learned that off of my own experience. No, we should have learned that in
high school.
And if I hadn't had this job, I wouldn't have health insurance right now. I only got health insurance because I learned about that. And then I also interpret calls for like savings accounts and like brokerage accounts and all this stuff. So I'm slowly learning that stuff from people that are doing it and making mistakes with it. So I have like a unique opportunity here to learn from other people's mistakes, but what about the rest of the community that doesn't have that? Like, nobody really has financial literacy.
Yeah. Insurance, you're supposed to learn from your parents. Like, that's right. Something that your parents teach you. What if you don't have a good structure at home to teach you these sort of things? What if they are making mistakes themselves?
Exactly.
I made huge mistakes when I first got my credit card. They gave me like a $250 limit. I racked it all the way up. And I thought...
Yeah, you're not supposed to use all of it, but you don't know that.
You don't know that, no. And the bank is not going to stop you.
You're just like, I have $250 available, so that means I can use it all. But no, you're supposed to keep it at like a third of what they give you or like something like that.
Yeah, a low percentage of it.
Right.
And then pay it off completely.
Until they raise your balance, and then you can use a little more, and so on and so on and so on.
Yeah.
But like... I only learned this from phone calls of other people.
Yeah.
And you just learned this from like your jobs, and from making the mistakes yourself.
I had terrible credit because I racked it all up and then I was only paying $25, every month.
Right.
That's what I learned to do. That's what people taught me, told me that was a good idea.
Pay the minimum balance and you're good.
Yeah, because nobody knows what we're doing. Unless you go to the bank and you're like, hey, give me the inside scoop. What's the best way to do this?
Right.
They told me, and this is what I've been doing because I rack it up I don't rack it all the way up, but the amount that I only use my credit card. That's for another reason, and we can get onto that a little bit. I use my credit card, and then every 15 days, every middle of the month, and then every first of the month, I pay it off completely. I don't need to owe them any money.
I think I read that on a TikTok. But I can't remember why you're supposed to pay it in the middle and whatever. But we'll talk more about finance like later on.
Yeah.
But it's just so many useful information.
That's something that nobody's going to teach you unless you go out and look for it. It's something that everybody should have because what is credit card debt? Like the second biggest debt like everybody has?
And that can screw up your whole life. Your ability to get a car, a nice house, living in a good neighborhood, like all kinds of things.
Your credit is heavily controlled by, your credit heavily controls many aspects of your life.
And you didn't know that, you're like, well, I have enough money in cash or in my like normal debit card account, so I should be good, right? And like your credit score is like 500 and you can't get anything.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, what's wrong? I'm doing well. And it's because nobody told you need to get credit cards and you need to like build up like all this stuff.
Yeah, everybody says pay everything cash money. That's the bomb thing to do.
That's like the gold rush era type stuff, like where nobody trusted banks and everybody like guarded their money in mattresses. Like my grandma still does it.
Yeah. And even the general savings accounts that we have nowadays. What does Chase give you? Like 0.000 something percent increase on your
no kind of
savings?
return whatsoever. I made 14 cents this year, y'all. I'm rich. I'm rich.
Somebody has to teach you about, accumulating interest, about, all these other people make their money.
Yep.
You graduate out of high school, you get a job, you screw up, you get terrible credit because you don't know how to handle credit. You get a terrible card with a terrible, reward system with, everything's horrible because they just send them out to people.
Right.
That's the bubble that hasn't popped yet. It's getting ready to, but not anytime soon. And, you just buy your money, you spend it, and that's it. You're living week to week, and it's terrible. They don't teach you money finance.
Imagine if you had a class, because most of the people in our class, at least that I remember, worked, right? They worked part-time.
Yeah.
We all did. Imagine a class that would have told us like, hey, okay, you work part-time. Let's all do this assignment. Let's put this amount of money into this kind of account. And let me teach you how that builds up. If we had started doing this when we were legally able to work at 16 years old, we would have had a decent credit score by now, a decent savings account, and retirement account, and brokerage account, and like life insurance, all kinds of things. But we just didn't have those opportunities because they weren't available to us.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of people that like are guided by their parents, like let's say like the proper American culture or whatever, like most of their parents and families have already gone through all of these mistakes. So they're like, hey, do this, don't do this, open your credit card at 16. We don't open credit cards till we're like in college.
Yeah.
That's it. I didn't have any kind of credit until I was 19, 20. And that's only when I like leased to own like a laptop. Like that was it. And I was like, wow, I'm doing so good. Meanwhile, there's so many people that started their credit at 16 and I just feel so behind the curve.
Or what was it that everybody would tell their kids? Buy a refrigerator at Conn's or Office Home Depot or something on credit, and that's how you're gonna build your credit.
Right.
It's dumb. Why would you buy a refrigerator you don't need? Just get a credit card and work on that.
Exactly.
But nobody teaches you that. It's pretty foolish that you have to learn it off of mistakes. And it's built that way for a reason, because they make money off of those mistakes,
And that's another thing too. And there's so many topics that we could go off on this. But like I've talked about benefits too, how they call it benefits instead of assistance. Like when you get like food stamp benefits or all of this like financial benefits, because you have to be between a certain income bracket to get food stamps or to get health insurance for free or to get blah, blah, blah. So most people want to stay below a certain income bracket to get those benefits. So you never want to move up because you think it's a good thing that you're getting all these things for free. It's a benefit, not assistance. It's a benefit. And there's so many like psychological things that just make you think like, oh, well, I'm comfortable here. I'm comfortable getting unemployment because I'm getting more than I would have when I was out there. But you just get so stuck. You don't think like, hey, I can get a job that pays $30 an hour or whatever other money an hour. But if you get a job that pays more than $16 an hour, you don't apply. You're not eligible for your benefits. So you don't want to do it.
Yep.
And it keeps most of us like poor, basically, like below this point, and everybody can keep stacking above you because all of them have all these like educational like guidance and all this stuff.
There's like 6 or 7 things that high schools should teach their kids,
but they don't. They don't do it in minority like communities. But why?
They do it in private schools.
Exactly. Why?
Yeah. And that's one of the things that would pull a lot of communities out of poverty. If you taught every kid graduating in 2021 how to do their finances, you're gonna have a whole bunch of new young adults that aren't, struggling with financial
that can
problems.
help their parents get out of debt and set up examples for their family. And 10, 20, 30 years from now, you see a whole line of people that are doing things correctly. Instead of having everybody go through the same ups and downs and everybody's at a freaking like plateau, like nobody moves up, like everybody moves up like a little millimeter and then goes right back down, and it's the cycle over and over and nobody ever moves.
Yeah, you brought up insurance. The only reason I have an insurance is because my job is a pretty good job and they gave me an insurance, but I don't know if it's a good plan. I just know it's a plan that they gave me. It feels good to me. Nobody taught me any alternative. I just know, okay, that's a good plan.
You're like, oh, I have insurance, so I must be covered. But little do you know, you pay like 60% out of pocket, and you're really paying like out of your, let's say you get a bill for $10,000 and you're paying like 7,000 of those dollars. And then after you pay those 7,000, then your insurance will cover the last like 2 or 3. And you're like, wow, I have insurance. You're basically not being covered for anything.
Yeah, basically.
And it's because you don't know any better. You don't know how to like calculate all those numbers for yourself and see, oh, would be the best for me because I don't use this much like medical care. Like I only go to the doctor like twice a year. I only go to the dentist like once a year. I only figured that out because of my job. That's the only reason.
Or they'll just teach you, oh, okay, just get a job that has a 401k without telling you that.
Right.
In all reality, a 401k isn't a good idea. It's pretty segmented into the finance advice that they want to give you based on who's helping you out with the program. Here's a really simple example of that. In high school, during lunch, before or after your gym class, you went to lunch. They didn't give you a bottle of water. They didn't give you a cup of water. They gave you milk. Do we not realize that middle of the day, it's noon, the sun is hot, we're out in the yard, we're getting ready to go to gym, they're loading us up with milk. What in the world kind of system is that?
I think that was more for like because at that time it was like, well, no, milk has been around forever. It's like the staple.
Yes.
But it's for the nutritional value.
It's for the nutritional value.
But water would do so much better. We're not even supposed to drink milk in the first place.
No, not anymore. Not at this certain age.
But not at all. Not from cows.
Really?
Cows are not... Their milk is not for us. That's why most people are lactose intolerant.
I thought calcium was good for developing kids.
Well, yeah, but cow milk isn't for us. Like that's why people like become lactose intolerant, because your body's not meant to process those kind of chemicals.
I realized I was lactose intolerant in high school whenever I would
Why
load
didn't they
up with
offer us water?
Chocolate milk loaded with sugar, chocolate, and then go out to the gym and run around, and I'd be sweating, like
throwing up.
My guts were I had the walk-in farts,
You just like clench your butt and try to make it to class or to the restroom.
A huge amount of people are lactose intolerant, but yet they're giving us milk. Why? Is it because, who was it? Oak Farms? Was it Oak Farms?
I think it was Oak Farms. Like that's the sponsor for the lunch meals or something.
Yeah, they get a deal with the education system, or we're from Houston. They get a deal with HISD. They're gonna sell them these many cartons of milk for this price. Either that or True Moo is gonna come in and sell theirs. It's goofy, but the Dasani's not gonna go in there because they're not gonna make the same amount of money. It's cheaper to sell as milk. Why is milk cheaper than water? I don't know. It's weird, but they have a weird contract with them. Either that or somebody in the board of True Milk, is friends.
It's always about money.
Yeah, it's all about the connection there. We had posters all over the walls of the gym saying, the best thing after a workout is a glass of milk.
That's so freaking... Who lied to you? Who lied?
Cereal in the morning? What's cereal? It's cookies. It's bread and sugar.
Eat some fruit, please. Nobody said, please eat your fruit in the morning. They're like, no, just eat a nice bowl of Rice Krispie treats.
Yeah.
And milk.
Here's wheat and sugar.
Cocoa Puffs are great.
Have this concrete.
Everything's like 1% away from being plastic.
We're in Texas. What is grits, right?
Oh, God. Jesus Christ.
Let grits dry. You can build a house out of grits.
Those adobe houses.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It was terrible. What was the average school lunch? They would give us milk.
And then a weird stale pizza and a little cube of like, sometimes there was a vegetable like a corn or a carrot or a weird like mush of some orange thing.
Yeah. Let's remember, because let's analyze just one of these meals. Let's say it was pizza day and they would give it to you with mac and cheese. And then as the vegetables, they had like a little cup of steamed broccoli.
Right.
Right. And so they're giving you milk, cow's milk, that provides minimal nutritional benefits to you.
And then
they're giving you pizza that's 80% carbs. It has a few slices of processed pepperoni and then some processed cheese on top. That's another, terrible. And then the tomato paste that's made out of, if you look at the ingredients, you see like
sugar.
Dry tomatoes, corn syrup, all
99% sugar.
All those beautiful little weird ingredients. Then they give you the mac and cheese, which is, again, more carbs, nothing but bread, and then cheese on top, powdered cheese of whatever weird cow they made up in the lab.
And then right before you get to the register, the option of all the hot chips you could want.
Yes.
Health.
7 different types of hot Cheetos, all the flavors of Doritos.
Jesus Christ.
The goofiest thing to me was, there's one time I went to the children's hospital here in Houston, and Texas Children's, I think it's called, right?
Uh-huh.
And there's a McDonald's in the lobby.
Yeah.
It's like, do people not learn?
It's just because it's cheap, all of these are just partnerships with other businesses.
It's nutritional, it's a nutritional hell when you let corporations decide, hey, I want to advertise this, or I want to put money to tell people that a good breakfast is the cornerstone of, your everybody should be having an egg for breakfast,
Right.
Like that's tons of proteins. That's, and we don't even know. When I was little, eggs were good. When I was a teenager, eggs were bad. Now they're good again. It's like we don't know what we're talking about.
Nobody knows what they're talking about. They change their mind every 5 years.
Yeah. There's people that are living based on carnivore diets. There's people that are living based on vegan diets.
I just want to eat.
Yeah.
I just want to eat.
But here's the craziest thing.
And not get fat.
Here's the craziest thing that me and my dad realized. And that's that when you sit down and look at a meal, you're getting 80% carbs and filler food. And then 10% protein and then 10% whatever else.
Oh my God. And the diet I want to follow, and again, it's because I've learned it on calls, is for people that are diabetic. They gave them this chart, and I don't know how accurate these numbers are because I don't remember it correctly, but they're look at a plate, and 2/3 of your plate should be just vegetables. That should be the majority of what you're eating, green vegetables.
Green, there you go. That's important.
Yeah, and then the tiniest sliver, maybe 1/8 of that should be your rice or your tiny little bit of carbs, and then a little tiny sliver of protein, and then the tiniest 0.001% of maybe something that you want to eat, because you can't realistically expect people to not eat something they like that tastes flavorful, but the majority of that plate should be vegetables.
Yes.
And that's the only diet we should really be following.
Or protein, depending on what your nutrition is.
Or protein, right, depending. But carbs are our freaking biggest thing. Rice, bread, pasta.
And carbs are, let me put it this way. At this point in society, we don't need them as much. At one point,
you said it was fast food. You don't need super quick, cheap carbs anymore.
No, we don't need them anymore
to survive.
Because we have an excess of protein and all other types of foods.
Right.
Carbs are cheap, and easy to digest, and it fills you up for the quick moment when you need them.
Yeah.
If you're an active person, you need carbs because you just need them to digest stuff really quickly. But now we have an overabundance of them. We don't need to eat as much as we used to because we don't work as much as we used to.
Exactly. We're not nearly as mobile as we used to be. Most of us are sitting for 90% of our day.
So
why do we need all that energy?
Yeah. And that's the big thing about corn. Corn is a superfood. People call avocado the superfood.
No, it's corn.
Corn is is the most incredible thing that not even God created. We created corn. Like corn is this corn used to be this tiny little thing that
it looked like
hay. That had like 5 or 6 kernels on it, and
they
over
like
time,
crossbreed.
the Mesoamerican civilizations crossbreeded it and created into this thing that it grows and produces you a ton of kernels.
Feeds a bunch of people at once.
If you're a country that really needs, to solve a hunger crisis, corn is the way to go. Mm-hmm. It feeds people and it's good, But now we have too much of it. We've turned it into corn syrup. That's the general flavoring, that the sugar, the sweetener that's used on most processed foods. We've turned it into feeding material for our animals.
Yep.
Cows and pigs and chickens are fed corn,
and then all of that gets put right back into us when we eat all of that meat, and we wonder why, like, we're gaining so much weight. And it's why you see, like, other countries, like, I gained so much weight when I came here because everything was, like, supersized. Yeah. Basically. Yeah. And, like, enhanced by all of these things.
Yeah, you can go to the grocery store and find chickens that are like ridiculous.
Oh my God, tomatoes as big as my head and super sweet. Like, that's not natural.
Well, okay, so speaking of natural, corn is the one thing that like nothing in the planet should be eating. It's not at all natural to any kind of ecosystem.
Right.
It's never been consumed by anything other than, the small little old kernel that used to be before, the Mayans and Aztecs turned it into the giant thing that we now consume. And it's found in everything. I told my family, like, whenever you go to a grocery store, and this is how I shop too, the only reason I will go into the middle aisles is if I'm looking for something like specifically sugar or a baking good or a spice, Yeah. But other than that, at a grocery store, you're supposed to come in through one door,
and go right out the other
along the wall, because in just about every grocery store along the wall are going to be the produce section,
and then all the meats.
Yeah, the dairy, the meat, and then the frozen, frozen dairies and eggs and all of that. Cheeses come right back out to the cashiers and get out.
Meanwhile, we go in every aisle. What do we want? What do we want?
Yes, the middle of it, you're going to find nothing but pastas, all carbs. You're going to find canned foods, which are loaded with corn syrup, all these kinds of ingredients. Yeah, you're going to find some seasonings are good. The kinds that are ground, like peppers, ground stuff. But then you're going to find condiments and ketchup and hot sauce that's loaded with sugar.
I can't live without sauces, though. I'm sorry. I love sauces.
But yeah, like I only go into the middle Cheetos and beers and sugar drinks. I only go into the middle aisles when I'm looking for sugar or stuff like that. Spices. I buy a lot of spices. But other than that, I'll go into a store and just I'll skip the produce sometimes. Nothing but meat. I like carnivore and keto diets, so that's my thing. But when you eat corn, you poop out corn. Like, your body takes nothing from it. Like, that's literally a food that should never be in anybody's diet. Our body doesn't know what to do with it, And you go to school, pizza's made out of, wheat and some weird corn mix. And, the chicken that they give you is a chicken that's farm raised and one of those shut down, no light, give them
poor baby.
Yeah. It's a terrible thing about our nutrition system. Again, cereal. It's literally just sugar bread that you're giving your kids in the morning. Pancakes.
I don't really like pancakes, though.
Yeah, I can't either. It's too much. But
I only like pancakes if I like drown them in strawberry syrup.
Too sweet for me.
Really?
Yeah. I don't like sweet foods. I like savory. Yeah. So that's the issue with a lot of our systems. A lot of it is based around money, because it's cheaper to sell corn and it's cheaper to sell that than the cost to raise a cow, like grass-fed, grass-finished, send it to the butcher. That's going to cost you thousands of dollars. You're going to get thousands of dollars back, but that's a longer investment.
Right.
Than to just grow corn and sell tons of it, Mm-hmm. It's one of those topics we gotta get to. If we didn't already cover it enough.
We like bounced around all kinds of topics. This was just the introduction, you know, a little taste of everything.
Here's a taste of everything. we're okay. We wanted to create this podcast because there's a lot of topics that aren't reaching, you know, the general audience. There's a lot of topics that are controversial that we need to reach with an open eye, you know, take that risk and talk about some very sensitive topics. And I partly wanted to do this podcast because there's a lot of stuff, as we were talking about schools, that just kids need an education on. Like, we're 23, we're not that old, but we had to learn a lot of stuff the hard way that kids really shouldn't have to learn the hard way.
And we don't claim to know everything either, but it's just, we only really see one perspective, and it's just nice to see other people out there that like think differently and like do things differently. And I think we've had conversations like this for our like 11 years of friendship now, and it's just cool to see it out there, to see like what like you guys think, what everybody else thinks about certain topics. So it's just cool for me specifically, like interacting with a bigger audience and seeing what everybody thinks and what people's opinions are and what they want us to talk about. So it's just, it's a cool journey. I want to see how this goes.
Let's see how it goes. All right. I think that's it for today. Thank you. Like, comment, subscribe.
Bye.
Screw that. Bye.